Should I buy or rent a home? This question has been doing laps around my head for the past few months. I'm graduating college in May, getting married in November, and if I want to avoid having to move in with my parents after I'm married, I'm gonna need to figure out the answer to this age-old question, like now. Buying a house. Historically, a sign of stability and the American dream. Now, seemingly harder than ever for millennials and Gen Z. It has been a great way to build equity, a guaranteed forced savings account, and a long-term investment opportunity for many. Even still, it has those that call it a liability.
Buying a house, worst investment you'll ever make in your entire life.
They say it's best to use that money you would have used for a down payment to instead invest in assets that cash flow. Renting, flexible, you're not tied down, seems easy, no need to save for a down payment, no property taxes, no dealing with repairs, you just pay your rent, the landlord takes care of the rest. Even still, there's those that say you're flushing your money down the toilet, making your landlord rich and helping them build equity while year after year, payment after payment, after you move out, those tens of thousands of dollars you put in didn't amount to anything. So, what the heck is better? I have no idea. Let's look at the numbers. So when deciphering this minefield of a question, there's two things that are essential to keep in mind to come to an accurate conclusion. Number one, what is the true cost of ownership versus renting? Now, I'm not talking about the mortgage payment versus the rent amount. We can't say that if the rent is $2,500 and the mortgage is $3,000, then rent is better because it's cheaper. This reasoning has some major flaws because it isn't comparing the true unrecoverable cost. We'll get to what those are in a minute. Second essential thing to keep in mind is that we have to make sure that we're looking at comparable examples. If we want to analyze whether it's best to buy or rent, then we have to make sure that we're comparing similar houses with similar values and in similar locations. I've been looking mainly at new construction. I'll go ahead and share my screen. However, in that area, there's not a whole lot, and I found one home that I liked that was for sale at $300,000, but I couldn't find one single comparable for rent. So for this example, so that we are able to compare between two houses in the same Sugar Land area with similar values built in the same year, we're going to be using two houses that are slightly above my specific price range that I don't really intend to buy, but that should work for this analysis. So for the homes we're analyzing, the home for sale is listed at $390,000 and the one for rent is renting at $2,750. So what's the true cost? Let's start with the rental house. The rent for the house I found is $2,750. However, like I previously said, that's not the true unrecoverable cost of renting. Although it's close because when you rent, it's not like some part of that is going towards equity. It really is unrecoverable. However, I want to consider everything, from rental insurance to how much rent will increase over the duration of your stay. Now, I did some research into the average rental insurance, and we are going to assume another $20 a month, which I know seems negligible, but I want to make sure I'm not leaving anything out. The bigger adjustment is the accounting for how much the rent is expected to increase. Typically, in Texas, we see a historical increase of around 2 to 4%. It's quite hard to know exactly, but for the sake of this example, we're going to assume that the rent will increase 3% per year over the 10 years that we will be staying in this house. After analyzing how much the rent will increase year over year and taking the average, we arrive at the unrecoverable cost of rent, $3,153. Now, I'm going to throw a number at y'all that doesn't have much to do with this analysis, and I want y'all to forget about it as soon as I say it, but it's just such a crazy number, I want to mention it. If we did stay at this house for 10 years, at the end, when we move out, we would have given the landlord. Actually, take a guess. How much do you think this unrecoverable cost of rent is over 10 years? Because it's actually not that hard to get to. Just multiply that $3,153 by 12 months times 10. Yeah, that's right. After 10 years of renting, we're down $378,000 and still don't have a house. Right, okay. So now let's analyze the true unrecoverable cost of buying a house. This is where it gets interesting. I know I just threw a bunch of numbers at y'all, but get ready for some more. Stay caffeinated, my friends. For this, again, I'm not simply speaking of the mortgage payment because that is not the real cost. The mortgage payment is going towards both interest, which is unrecoverable, but also equity, which is recoverable and is money that is actually being used to buy down the house. Okay, fine, so we don't count for equity. Is that just the interest payment that is unrecoverable then? No. On top of that, there's other costs associated with owning a house, such as taxes, HOA fees, repairs and maintenance, and the opportunity cost of the down payment. All of these costs are not going towards equity in the house and are simply expenses. So let's break each of them down for this example to find the true unrecoverable cost of buying. We found that the house is selling for $390,000, assuming we don't negotiate the price down, which of course we're going to negotiate the price down. By the way, go watch my video on negotiation. But anyway, for whatever stupid reason, let's assume we don't. For this example, I'm going to assume also a down payment of 20%. You can find loans that ask for less down payment, but I would recommend 20% if you can. In this case, 20% is $78,000. If we get a 30-year fixed loan at an interest rate of between 6 and 7, let's say 6.5, which is high compared to a few years ago, but that's just the market we're in, you're looking at a monthly mortgage payment of $1,972. Out of this $1,972, a certain amount is going towards equity, while the rest goes towards interest. However, this amount changes in proportion over time, and it's really hard to say how much of it is in interest, i.e. unrecoverable. To see that, I plugged in the numbers to a mortgage calculator that helped me see what part of my payments go towards principal versus interest every year. So what I did is I added up the first 10 years of equity and interest and found the average. So during the first 10 years, the average amount that goes towards equity, towards paying down your principal, is $396 a month, while the rest, $1,576, goes towards interest. So you see how even though we are buying a house and it seems like when we make our mortgage payments, that money is still ours just in the form of a house, well, not all of it, because a big part of that, especially in the first few years, is actually unrecoverable and it's going towards interest. But anyway, that $1,576, that is the first part of our unrecoverable true cost of buying a house. To that, however, we have to add taxes, which are typically between 1 and 4% of the value of the property that you have to pay each year. In this case, the tax rate for that property is 3.24%. So that's $12,636 divided by 12 months. That's another $1,053 of monthly unrecoverable costs. Then the HOA fee is another $1,000 a year divided by 12. That's $83 a month. Next, we have to account for repairs and maintenance. This is very hard to estimate. Many people suggest estimating 1% of the home value, but in this case, the house is new, so we will expect to see minimal repairs in the next 10 years. However, I will be putting down $200 a month, which is a little bit more than 0.05% of the value. So I know I just threw a whole lot of numbers at you, but if y'all have been paying attention, you would see that the monthly unrecoverable cost for buying a house is now $2,912. But that's not all. That number is actually bigger. We haven't even accounted for the opportunity cost of the down payment. You remember how we calculated that our 20% down payment would involve us parting ways with $78,000? Yeah, well, that's a lot of money, and we are choosing to tie it up in one house. Now, granted, that asset will hopefully appreciate in value, letting us see a small or not so small return on that investment. Call it, what, 3%? No. Actually, the historical appreciation rate for Texas is actually closer to 7% year over year. That's actually not bad. I mean, the stock market has historically returned an average of 8%, but that's way more volatile, so maybe it is better to invest in your house. Maybe. We're only holding for 10 years, and we don't really know what the 10 years of real estate could look like. Now, here's the thing. This is where your individual case can vary a lot from others. That money can be used in a lot of different ways, each with a very different return on investment. Maybe you have a business that you're trying to grow, and investing that $78,000 would see a much bigger return in that. Or maybe your friend has a startup that could be worth $0 in a few years, or it could make you a millionaire. So it's hard to account for the opportunity cost of capital when we don't know two things. We don't know the appreciation rate we'll see in real estate, and we also don't know what our alternative rate of return would be if we invested it elsewhere. Having said all that, in my case, I'm still going to assume that I could see higher returns if I invested that $78,000 in other real estate avenues, which is like what I do for a job. Buying an investment property can give around 12%. Buying land, developing, it can give upwards of 30%. Building, even more. I'm going to estimate that in my case, I can find 20% returns in my real estate business. So by buying a house, my opportunity cost would be 13%. That's 20 minus the 7% that we could see with buying a house. I mean, that's if I had $78,000 laying around. We haven't even talked about that. That's a whole crap ton of money. Not everyone has $78,000 laying around. And this goes back to the beginning of the video where I said that millennials and Gen Z are seeing it harder to buy a house. Real estate values, like I said, have historically risen quite a bit, which is great if you bought it 50 years ago. It does make it a little bit harder to buy now that the values have seen a bajillion% increase. But for the sake of this example, we're going to assume that we do have that down payment amount ready to invest, whether it's on the house or whatever other investment. Now, we're going to take that $78,000 and find that 13% opportunity cost year over year for 10 years. Okay, so after plugging into an investment calculator, we find that if we invested that $78,000 at 13%, after 10 years, we'd have $264,776. After subtracting the $78,000, we get $186,776, which if we divide that evenly across 10 years, that's $1,556 per month. Okay, so that's another part of the unrecoverable cost associated with the opportunity cost. And I know it's crazy, but that's why people like Grant Cardone or other real estate millionaires choose not to buy a house. It's because with that money, they have the avenues to invest and see much, much higher returns. And at the end of the day, that opportunity cost is just adding up. Well, we got the real unrecoverable cost of buying, at least in my case, $4,468, while renting is only $3,153. Now, I think we have to be honest and say that this last part with the opportunity cost of capital really threw buying a house under the bus. Most people don't have an opportunity cost of capital at 13% because they can't get those 20% and above returns. Maybe the stock market can get them 8%, and since real estate is only getting them 7%, their opportunity cost is 1%. But whatever, if we don't account for the cost of capital that I had at 13% because they can get that 7% in the stock market, the true cost of buying a house would be $2,912. Cheaper than renting. So it really depends on your individual opportunity cost of buying. It also depends on interest rates, how long you're staying in the house, and many other factors. Okay, I made this video sincerely for my sake. Before making this video, I thought by every metric, buying a house would have been the better financial decision in my case. I was simply hoping to have a concrete look at some numbers to kind of back up my hypothesis. I was super wrong in my case. Again, in my case. Now, one more thing I want to mention, and this applies to everyone. This is not an easy question to answer for a reason. It's because everyone's case is different. Not only that, but even if one avenue is the right financial decision, that doesn't mean it's the right decision. In my case, I may value the stability, peace of mind, and control over where I live enough to make the difference in cost worth it. I might still buy a house just because I value all those things more than I value whatever the difference is. In your case, even if buying makes more financial sense, the correct decision may still be to rent, simply because you may value the flexibility more. You may value the ability to move from place to place, or the fact that you don't need to take responsibility for repairs and maintenance, or maybe you really like the location that living in an apartment could afford you. So it really is case by case. It really depends. Regardless, I hope this helped you. I know it helped me, even though I'm still unsure of what we'll do. I guess we'll see. First, I have to graduate.